So I want to kick things off today with this story that was sort of buried in our research.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's the perfect key to, unlock this whole topic. It's about a 17-year-old girl. She's the niece of one of the writers for this deep dive.
Is it the puzzle story? I think I remember this one.
It is the puzzle story.
Yeah.
So this teenager, she's completely obsessed with Frida Kahlo. Calls her favorite artist in the world. She has the socks, the laptop sticker, the little enamel pen. But here's the kicker. She has never actually stood in front of a Frida Kahlo painting.
Wow.
Not once. Her entire entry point wasn't a museum or an art history class. It was a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle she got for Christmas.
Which, honestly, in 2026 is not that uncommon.
Right. She literally pieced Frida's face together on her dining room table before she knew a thing about, surrealism or her biography. And then once the puzzle was done, she started seeing that face everywhere.
It's a phenomenon that actually has a name. Fridomania.
Fridomania.
And it is fascinating because here we are, it's February 2026, and you can make a really strong argument that no artist's likeness, living or dead, is more recognizable.
More than Picasso. More than Warhol.
I think so. She's ubiquitous.
Which brings us to the focal point of today's deep dive. We're looking at this major exhibition that's running right now at the Museum of Fine Arts, Houston. It's called Frida, the Making of an Icon.
Right, and it runs through May 17th.
But our mission today isn't just to talk about, pretty paintings on a wall.
No. We're doing a bit of forensic accounting on fame itself.
Exactly. We're trying to figure out how a Mexican painter who had a relatively small sort of niche following when she died back in 1954 somehow transformed into this global brand. A feminist saint, a commercial powerhouse, all 70 years later.
It just doesn't follow the usual rules of art history.
Not all.
It's a really complex puzzle like the one that Nice was building. It involves, high art, brutal commerce, identity politics, and this is the part I didn't see coming.
International trade agreements.
International trade agreements.
We are definitely going to get to that because, that part blew my mind. But let's start at the beginning, or I guess the end. Frida dies in 1954.
Right.
If we were to hop in a time machine, walk down the street in New York or London in, say, 1955, and ask someone about Frida Kahlo, what happens?
You'd probably get a blank stare.
Really?
Yeah, that's the most important context to set. When she passed away, she was respected, for sure, but by a very tight, very small circle of collectors and friends. She was not a household name.
She wasn't Frida yet.
No. To the general public, if she was known at all, she was just Mrs. Rivera.
The wife of Diego Rivera.
The eccentric wife of Diego Rivera, who was, arguably the most famous muralist in the world at that time.
That is just such a wild reversal of fortunes. Today, you ask a teenager about Diego Rivera, and they might know him as Frida's husband.
If they know him at all, it's a complete 180.
So what was it about that time?
Well, you have to remember, the mid-50s art world was all about men, specifically abstract expressionism. Think Jackson Pollock.
Big, messy, abstract canvases.
Exactly. Masculine energy. And Frida's work was small, it was figurative, it was deeply personal, and it was painted by a woman. It was everything the, quote, serious art world wasn't looking for.
Okay, so she's Mrs. Rivera. She just kind of dabbles in painting. How do we get from there to the face on the tote bag? The source material traces this, and it seems like the first domino falls in the late 70s.
Right. This is what we're calling the awakening. And you really can't separate her rise from the political movements of the time.
You mean like the student movements of 68?
The Los Loco massacre in Mexico, the civil rights movement in the U.S., second wave feminism just exploding everywhere.
So people were looking for new symbols, new heroes.
They were hungry for icons of resistance, of nonconformity, and suddenly, in the late 70s and early 80s, these biographies start appearing. But the real match that lit the fuse, the thing that took it global, was Hayden Herrera's biography in 1983.
I've seen that book. It's a huge book.
It was a blockbuster. And it did something really crucial. It moved Frida out of just art history and into the human interest story.
It told the whole dramatic story.
The whole thing. The suffering, the fluid sexuality, her radical politics, and activists, Chicano artists, feminists, the LGBTQ community, they saw her and they said, she's one of us.
She became a flag for all these different movements.
She did. But even then, in the 80s, she was like activist famous.
Right. Not mainstream famous.
Exactly. She wasn't on a refrigerator magnet in a gift shop in Ohio yet.
Okay, so that's the gap we need to bridge. How do you go from activist hero to mass market celebrity? And this is where the research took that turn I was not expecting. we have to talk about the 1990s and geopolitics.
This is the part of the deep dive that really makes you rethink how culture works. The sources point to a very specific event in 1990.
What was it?
This massive exhibition at the Met in New York. Mexico. Splendors of 30 centuries.
Sounds incredibly grand.
Oh, it was designed to be a citywide festival. But here's the thing. It wasn't just an art show. It was a charm offensive. It was organized by the Mexican government.
Okay, so why? What was happening between the U.S. and Mexico in the early 90s?
NAFTA.
The North American Free Trade Agreement.
Precisely. NAFTA was being negotiated, and there was this huge push by Mexican business and government to get the deal passed. But they had a PR problem.
What was the problem?
The perception of Mexico in the U.S. media. It was often focused on poverty, immigration, drug trafficking. They needed a rebrand.
So they used art?
They used soft power. They wanted to show that Mexico was this cultural powerhouse, with a rich, sophisticated history that could rival Europe's. They were trying to smooth the path for the trade deal by conquering New York culturally.
And Frida was a diplomat.
In a way, yeah. She became the face of this whole campaign. Her self-portrait with Monkey, the one from 1938, was plastered on billboards, bus stops, magazine ads, all over New York City.
Wait, hold on. So the fact that we see her face everywhere now, that started as a government marketing campaign to sell a trade agreement.
Effectively, yes.
Yeah.
She was the perfect ambassador. She was exotic enough to be interesting, but her connection to the high art world gave her legitimacy. She became the face of a nation that was, open for business.
That is deeply cynical and also completely fascinating. Like, she was drafted into the diplomatic corps 40 years after she died.
It is, but a government campaign can only take you so far, right? Bureaucrats can put up billboards, but they can't make something cool.
You need a different kind of spark for that.
A different kind of spark.
And I think I know who the spark is. The source material mentions a critical accelerant in the early 90s.
Madonna.
Of course. It had to be.
You really can't overstate Madonna's influence back then. She was the absolute center of the pop culture universe, and she became obsessed with Frida.
To bid some of her paintings, right?
2 major paintings.
Yeah.
Spent millions. And she talked about her constantly in interviews. She even wanted to play her in a movie for a while.
So Madonna basically took Frida by the hand and introduced her to Hollywood, to MTV, to the whole fashion world.
She validated Frida for a demographic that had never set foot in the Met. So you have this perfect storm.
The political push from NAFTA making her visible.
And the celebrity endorsement from Madonna making her desirable.
Wow. It's wild to think about that combination, NAFTA and Madonna, conspiring to build an icon.
A perfect storm of politics and pop culture.
But let's get back to the exhibition itself, because the curators in Houston, they're not just putting up 35 Frida paintings and, calling it a day.
No, not at all.
They've got work by 80 other artists in there, too. Why?
Well, this is to show the scope of her influence. The exhibition argues that you can't understand Frida just by looking at her paintings. You have to look at who she inspired.
So what are we talking about?
Surrealists, Chicano and Chicana artists, feminists, LGBTQ artists, disabled artists. I mean, the list goes on.
She's like a mirror. Everyone looks at her and sees something they can relate to.
That is the constructed identity aspect the source material talks about. The curator, Carmen Ramirez, she notes that Frida was doing personal branding decades before that was even a term. She carefully crafted this image.
She really did. She had all these different facets, the intellectual, the wife.
The avant-garde intellectual, the devoted wife, the mestiza embracing her mixed heritage, the bisexual lover.
So if you're an activist, she's yours. If you're a romantic, she's yours.
Exactly. But there is a through line. It isn't just that she ticked all these demographic boxes. It's the way she painted. The source compares her to giants of self-portraiture. Rembrandt, Van Gogh, Francis Bacon.
Those are heavy hitters.
They are. And the comparison holds up because of her raw vulnerability. She was willing to be uncomfortably exposed.
I love that description in the notes. It says she's like the dinner party guest who started sharing their darkest secrets 5 minutes after you meet them.
It's a great analogy. She just didn't hold back. She depicted miscarriage. She depicted violence against women. She depicted physical pain. Nobody else was putting that on a canvas in the 1930s and 40s.
Not like that.
Not like that. And that gave permission to later generations, artists with disabilities, women, queer artists, to say, okay, I can tell my story too. I can be messy and raw.
But this brings us to the double-edged sword of it all, doesn't it? Because her story is so dramatic, so full of tragedy, that sometimes feels like the story just overtakes the art.
This is the trap of biography, and it is a major concern for art historians. Her life was, well, it was melodramatic.
I mean, let's just list it out. She had polio as a kid, left her with a limp, then the bus crash at 18.
Which was just horrific. I mean, people forget the brutality of it. An iron handrail impaled her. Her spine was broken in 3 places. Her collarbone, ribs, pelvis, all crushed. She spent her life in these medical corsets and casts. She had something like 35 surgeries.
And then there's the soap opera of her marriage to Diego Rivera.
The infidelities, the divorce, the remarriage, and the affair with Leon Trotsky, of all people. It's breathless stuff.
Right.
And the danger, as the art historians see it, is that all this melodrama obscures the actual painting. People look at the canvas and they just see an illustration of her diary. They forget she was a technical genius.
That's a fair point. But if the art was mediocre, the biography wouldn't matter.
Right.
We wouldn't still be talking about it.
That is the counterpoint. Exactly. If the paintings weren't brilliant, her story wouldn't sustain this. The interest would have a ceiling. But with Frida, we haven't hit the ceiling yet.
There's a quote from the curator that really stuck with me. She talks about the emotional response people have. She says it's not just art critics. It's hairdressers, museum guards, abuelitas.
She mentions that when you bring up Frida's name, people start crying.
Crying.
Out of joy or sadness. That is rare. You don't usually see people weeping over a Picasso in quite the same personal way. She just connects.
And that connection, I guess, brings us to the other side of the coin, the commerce, the whole Frida Mania gift shop side of things.
You cannot separate the two anymore. The exhibition in Houston actually has a whole gallery just for this. Over 200 mass market objects.
So the tote bags, the socks, the puzzles.
All of it. And while some critics might roll their eyes and call it the Disneyfication of Frida,
Yeah.
the curator makes a valid point. Owning a Frida object, it allows for a personal relationship. It makes the icon accessible.
Like a secular sainthood or something. You wear the T-shirt to feel a little bit of that strength.
Precisely. And that tote bag might just be the reason a teenager eventually walk into a museum to see the real thing. It's an entry point.
Speaking of entry points, and the Houston exhibition specifically, the source material had a little traveler's note for anyone who's actually planning to fly to Houston to see this before it closes in May.
Oh, yeah, I looked into this. The recommendation is the Hotel Daphne.
It sounds incredibly stylish. It's in the Heights neighborhood, right?
Yeah, that's right. Opened late last year, 2025. It's got this arts and crafts style, painted bricks, stepped parapets. It feels very tactile and handmade, which, feels right for a Frida trip. It's not some glass tower.
And apparently it's not just a place to sleep. It's an art destination itself.
Yeah, they have the Ackerley family art collection on site. Over 160 pieces, mostly from Texas-based artists. So the idea is you leave the blockbuster Frida show, you come back to the hotel, and you continue the art tour in a more intimate setting.
Okay, but we can't skip the food. The notes explicitly mention the restaurant, Hipsy.
Right. Prohibition-era supper club style. But the highlight that was mentioned, and this is critical, is a tableside mozzarella cart.
A tableside mozzarella cart. Okay, I'm sold. I'm booking a flight for the cheese alone.
It does ground the whole experience, You go see the icon of Mexican art, you explore these heavy themes of pain and identity, and then you decompress in a space that celebrates local art and, well, good food.
So, bringing this all back together, we've covered a lot of ground. We went from a quiet death in 1954 to this global explosion in 2026.
And it wasn't accidental. I think that's the key takeaway. It was a mix of, yes, undeniable artistic brilliance, but it was also the political timing with NAFTA, the celebrity endorsement from Madonna, and a specific kind of vulnerability that it transcends time.
She was the right artist with the right story at the exact right moment in history.
And she gave us a visual language for pain that we just didn't have before.
So here's the thought to leave you with. When you see that face on a tote bag or a T-shirt or a jigsaw puzzle, what are we actually consuming? Are we celebrating a feminist icon and a brilliant artist? Or are we just consuming the tragedy of her biography because it makes for a good story?
It's the tension between the artist and the brand, and I don't think there's an easy answer to that.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
But next time you see that unibrow on a product at the store, maybe take a second to look up the actual painting it came from. Look at the brushstrokes, not just the merchandise. That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for listening.
Thank you.